wasn't that bad. Nobody showed up. But it was, something has to, the MO or something has to change.
Yeah, thanks. You guys have anything?
No.
You guys have anything
How many things you want to pull out of
pull
consent?
from
agenda?
consent? Good. Okay.
Too hard, though.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Board of Supervisors meeting on November 5th, 2013. Can we all rise for the pledge and stand for a moment in gratitude of our veterans that have past service and currently serving our nation? The pledge is led by Supervisor Rivas.
All right. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for a certificate posting?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. This morning we have a couple of presentations to make, and the first one is a certificate of recognition to Ralph Brigantino that he had a award given out Saturday night at out at the Brigantino Ranch behind San Yusto Reservoir as the 2013 Farmer of the Year, and Supervisor Munzer did such a great job awarding that. I'll turn it over to him.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve all three of the proclamations.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, hearing none.
Not seeing anybody from the family here today. We did make a presentation to Ralph Saturday night, and maybe we scared, or maybe I scared off the family from coming back to receive it for him because he is out of town today. But basically, we have a certificate of recognition presented to Ralph Brigantino for being named San County Farm Bureau 2013 Farmer of the Year, and it was done for his outstanding dedication and commitment to the county farming industry. So we just want to recognize Ralph for all he's done these many years.
Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. The next presentation we have on our agenda, and I'm told that this is to be presented at the LULAC Veteran Breakfast on Veterans Day. And this certificate of recognition is to First Class Sergeant Hector Torres, who is the 2013 LULAC Veteran of the Year honoree. And this is a real important honor that we want to show the board's appreciation, San Diego County's appreciation for all our veterans that are serving our country. And Sergeant Hector Torres is not with us today. I understand his sister is here, but Supervisor Rivas, you want to say a few words as far as about the certificate of recognition and maybe.
Right. Actually, all I can add is that Hector is a veteran of the Desert Storm, Afghanistan, and the Iraq War. So we certainly are very appreciative of his services and of his service to not only us but to this country. And I will be at the breakfast next week. It is a great event, and I encourage all of those who have not attended to actually attend. It's a great breakfast. They have great food, but it's a great way to honor our veterans here in San Benito County. So, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. The third presentation we have is a certificate of recognition to Mr. David Wright of Wright Brothers for serving 29 years as a member of Workforce Investment Board of San Benito County. And without these volunteers working on these boards and commissions and their dedication, a lot of work that needs to be done by, local government just isn't done. And we want to express our gratitude to that, and Supervisor Barrios has that recognition.
Is there a representative? Right in front of me, I apologize. Anyway, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we want to express our appreciation. Dave has been with the Private Industry Council, the Youth Employment Program, and the Workforce Investment Board. The years are long. I'm sure has put in countless hours, and we appreciate everything that you have done for our community, for our youth, and you're very, very much appreciated. So, in appreciation for 29 years of outstanding commitment, dedication, and contributions to the residents of San Benito County, we present you with a certificate of recognition. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
I'd like to thank the County of San Benito for letting me do this. This has been a lot of fun, really, and we've been helping people by giving them a hand up and not a handout so that they become good citizens in our community, and I think that's real important, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in that, so thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer has a word.
David, I just want to thank you. I served on the Workforce Investment Board with you, I believe for 6 years, and I just appreciate your leadership on that board and when I was serving on it, and it was a pleasure to serve with you. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to public comment, and this is part of the agenda. If there's any items that is not on the agenda that the public would like to discuss, feel free to do so. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
John Rivka.
Yeah.
I want to make a very brief comment. I'm a resident. I'm living in a guest house in Aromas that has evolved to become an illegal guest house. I'm sure I'm not alone that way. There are other people living in illegal guest houses that are comparable. Except there's one point that I'd like to make to everybody that has prompted this whole situation, which is that if you are in an illegal guest house and in an illegal second residence, effectively, you really have very limited or no access to 911. That's something that fortunately I found out without having a heart attack or something, even though I have a history of having 3 aortic aneurysms. And I found this out inadvertently by complaining to AT&T that my internet service was limited and inconsistent and so forth and slow. And they effectively told me that the reason it was slow was because I didn't have a fiber optic cable, and there was only one fiber optic cable allowed per address because they, I guess, remunerate the county for 911 service as part of what they provide. In any event, as a result, as it turns out, if I were to call 911, they would first of all show up to the main house and not my house. And secondly, they may not even come to my place at all because my place is up a long driveway, and they would come down to the street level according to the code inspector, and they would ask that the person who's in trouble come down to the street level to meet the fire truck or whatever it is, which obviously can be a very unrealistic scenario if you're in trouble. So even though people don't think of this in terms of an illegal guest house and it's not a big deal and everything is fine, if something like that should happen, you can be out of luck. And I want you to know that I originally called building and planning at San Benito County. I hope my 3 minutes aren't up yet. And I ultimately got in touch with the building inspector, who sent me an email and said she would look into it, and I was upset. I wanted her to just come up and see whether my house was legal or not. And accordingly, then I tried to reach out to Supervisor Botello, and his staff was on vacation at the time. And I said, oh, here we go again. I'm going to get the runaround, and it's going to take a while to get anybody to respond. Well, I want you to know that Supervisor Botello called me back himself the next day. And I was so impressed with his response directly. He was so sensitive to the situation. Evidently, he has a background as a fireman, so he's sensitive to these 911 issues as well. My time's up. But I just want to give a shout out to Supervisor Botello and tell you all that he's renewed my faith in government, which has been shattered by what's happened with Congress recently. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming down and the kind words.
Marty Richmond.
Good morning, Marty Richmond from Hollister. First of all, we're going to have to chip in and buy you a ticket to Washington if you were able to renew anybody's faith in government. The second thing is I like to just put it aside from my main topic to say I parked across the corner here on West Street and came out of the parking lot and looked across the street, and they've got the landscaping in at the courthouse, and it looks absolutely gorgeous with the wall there and the title and the landscaping and the fall trees, and I hope you get a photographer out there to get some pictures under these conditions, because under these light conditions, and now with the landscaping, it looks terrific. So congratulations to a great project. Looks like well done from the outside. Now to my main topic, I wanted to come up here to personally thank the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chairman, through you, for their continuing and support for the veterans in the community, as you brought up this morning. When I took my oath, 1961, that's a long time ago now, I did not know that I was going to make a career out of it. So I did it for 23 years. My brother was in the service. My uncle was a graduate of West Point, flew P-51s. My father was in the Army. My granddaughter, as you know, is a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne. Her dad is a retired command sergeant major. So it's become kind of a family business, as the joke goes. And so your continued support of the veterans in the community, who really make up a relatively small portion of every community in America. Currently, only about 9% of the adults in America have served in the armed forces at any particular time. And I just want to give a shout out to the World War II veterans who originally there were about 6.5 million of them, about 1.5 million are left, and have a median age of 92 years old right now. And we are losing them at about several hundred a month, I believe it is. So a shout out to the World War II veterans. If you bump into one, say thanks. And thank you for your continued support of the veterans and the people who have served the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Marvin Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was debating on giving you a break this week, and then I saw the editorial cartoon in this morning's San Jose Mercury, and it implied that the oceans are going to rise another 4 feet. So I thought I would come and just mention that yesterday I made a copy of the ice coverage in our Arctic and Antarctic. If you notice the one for the northern hemisphere, that the yellow line there has it just about in the middle of the average of the last 30 years for ice coverage. That's on the, should be on the front page. Up at the top it says Northern Hemisphere. And if you flip it over and look at the back, you can see there yesterday the ice coverage at the Northern Hemisphere was at an all-time high for this date in the year. A little bit less than it was a couple of weeks ago, but at an all-time high. So I don't know where we're going to get 4 more feet of water in the oceans. It's not coming from our Arctic or Antarctic. They are not melting. They're actually getting back to normal. And which coincides with an article that was in the London Mail over the weekend. You can find things in the British or Canadian newspapers you can't find in the U.S. newspaper. The article referred to a report from the British Meteorological Office, and they were saying that it appears that we are in the 30-year cyclical period of cooling. We've had 30 years of warming, 30 years of cooling, controlled by the ocean currents. That's out of my league. That was their report, not mine. But in any case, they had reported earlier that for the last almost 2 decades, 17 years I believe it is, that the global temperature's been constant. So that's some consistency there. We'll find out in another 15 or 20 years whether they're right or not. Second sheet you have there is the one that I've shown you before. Chapter 17 of the United Nations Agenda 21 book says that we've got to have a biodiversity treaty. There are many countries in the world that have signed it. The United States has not. So the Center for Biological Diversity and several other organizations said that what the United States should have is the 50% off limits to humans, the red areas there in your graph that I gave you. That and the yellow areas are restricted use by humans. I think you were familiar with the Center of Biological Diversity. I believe they're the ones that sued you a couple of weeks ago over your fracking ordinance, one of their party members. So they say we should all move to the cities. I don't know what that's going to do to San Benito County. But California, not to be outdone, on the back of the page, this is California's goal for sequestering land to keep people away. And if you notice on both of them, there are little connecting areas between this one and that one. They've got connecting areas in there. That came right out of the Agenda 21 book in 1992. It's also in your general plan. That's all for now. Am I up?
Okay.
That's fine. And I'll probably give you a break next week.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Alfred Valenzuela.
Good morning, Board. My name is Alfred Valenzuela. I live on 1500 Nash Road, and I've talked to you guys about the water there before and the West Hills project that's going on. I usually clean that road from the bridge on to Riverside. I clean it up, and I find paperwork all the time. I have a 6-year power log that's generating power from our property. If you guys want to see it, I could.
You could pass it to the clerk there. Thank you.
Well, I feel that our water is being used to, how do you say, dilute the water for the federal government, for you guys could show water that the water's good. We started with the 5,000-gallon tank for the fire sprinklers that we have in our homes now. It's not new construction, it's old construction. And from the California state law, I know that if you're doing new construction, you put fire sprinklers in, whatever. But I got fire sprinklers in my home. And we started all this business back in 2004 or 2005. And Byron Turner, I showed him some paperwork saying that we were not a labor camp, and we've never been a labor camp. And I have papers. I mean, I always bring my books, all this and that. I'm not bringing nothing today but besides that paper. But I'm just worried about our water and if the county's going to take it or who's going to do what with it. And my big concern is my mother now, too, because she's been stressed out over this. Mr. Botello, I know you've been on my property and you've seen what's there. And from 5,000 gallon tank, we got 40,000 gallon water tank. I mean, 20,000 each, and one of the weights don't even work, the levels, you know, and I've talked to De La Cruz about it, and, you know, I mean, he called me up one time, and he even told me that his wife told him to stay out of it, and I don't know what that meant, but I just need to know what's happening with our water. It's a big concern of mine, and even Jim DeMonica, he went to Madroga, the water, the well pumping people, and he gave me the original plans, which was only one fire hydrant and one tank. Well, DeMonica went over there, and he showed him the new plans, and it wasn't passed by you guys, and now we have 2 tanks. Now we got a fire hydrant city and county. Well, I thought taxpayers paid for those fire hydrants, not us alone. So I would like to have some answers, or if you guys could help me out, or what's going on, you know, because I've been seeing this happening, and I've been telling my mom, my sister, she's not a good business person. I could tell you straight out. She lost property on the house. Joe Rocha owns it now. He gets free water from us because my sister made a deal with him to have her daughter live there. And another thing, my sister has so much garbage right there in front of her yard, and I've been talking about it, gone to the city. I'm sure Scatini heard me too, talking about my sister and all this and that. I mean, it's terrible, because I know Chambers is gonna go start looking around, and my sister has semis, trailers, a car. I mean, I'm trying to clean up the place. I'm sure it looks different now. I've been there for 5-6 years, and I've cleaned up the place. I even cleaned out the river bit, but then again, there's more.
Okay.
Am I done? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Venezuela. Anyone else from the public would like to address the board? If not, we'll move on to department head announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do have a few announcements today. As you know, we contract with Monterey County for our Veterans Service Affairs within our county. And with the retirement of Thomas Griffin, Monterey County has hired a new branch director. And what I want to do is introduce you to the board as well as to the public. George Dixon, if you might come up to the podium and maybe say a few words.
Board, I'm George Dixon. I'm the new branch director for Monterey County. And before I say anything, are there any veterans in this room? Please stand up and be acknowledged. I'm a veteran, combined 33 years, and I want to do service to both counties. We have Sherry Stevenson out at the center out there, and I'm glad to be a part of both Monterey County and San Benito County. I'm originally from Los Angeles County.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and welcome, San Benito County, and we look forward to working with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, George. The second item I have is as just a reminder to the board and as well as to the public is that our next board meeting, November 19th, we're going to be presenting to you the fiscal year 12-13 fourth quarter as well as fiscal 13-14 first quarter financial report update. So I just wanted to make sure that the board and the public are aware of that, and that was brought to us by the board. Other than that, I have no other department head announcement.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to board announcements. Supervisor Rivas.
Yeah, the only announcement I had was once again to invite the community to the Veterans Breakfast on Monday, which is November 11th, from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. It is going to be held at San Benito High School in the cafeteria. The cost of the breakfast is $8, and again, we will be honoring this year's Veteran of the Year, who is Hector Torres, as we mentioned earlier. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Oh, none right now, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Thank you.
Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to add to Supervisor Rivas's, the presentation to the veterans is going to be between 8 and 9 o'clock. So that, and they encourage everyone to take a veteran out to breakfast, so I will be doing that. And I just want to just inform the board and the community that there's an organization called Girls Inc. that is really being very successful nationally. And what it's doing, it's taking and paying attention to young women at risk, helping them through their education, their well-being, their safety, and just to be great role models, this organization, for these young women. Very, very successful, and we're looking, there's a branch in Salinas called the Central Coast Branch, but we're looking to getting that, a branch here in San Benito County. So I'm going to support it, and I think there are a lot of individuals in the county that will do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On October 19th, down at what most people know as the Piscinas Ranch, I attended the first annual San Benito County Olive Festival, and for a first-time event, it was very well received. We had actually quite a few county employees helping out with it, volunteering for it. County Fire was down there with their volunteers, and it was just a really great first-time event. The next evening, I attended the 4-H meeting, which they celebrated the 100th year of the California, well, 4-H being in California, and I presented to them the proclamation that we had approved. On the 23rd, I was asked to be part of the forum that participated in talking about the library and funding of the library. And actually, I have an idea I'd like to throw before the board, which I'll bring about at one of our items, actually. And then on the 30th, the high school had their forum. Again, it was very well attended, and they are looking to pass a bond measure to upgrade and do some major repairs on the high school. And then last Saturday, as was mentioned, was at the San Benito County Farm Bureau dinner that honored Ralph Brigantino. It was a fun event. And my last announcement is an advertisement. The United Way of San Benito County is having their major fundraiser, their Christmas dinner. It'll be November 16th, and I have tickets for sale if anyone is interested. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. As for myself, I guess I should talk about this. Thursday afternoon, I had a call from Judge Sanders if we could meet, and I said certainly. And the topic of discussion was court security, and so I asked our CAO to join me in meeting with Judge Sanders, Mr. Solario, and the Sheriff Thompson. And apparently, we're just about as getting ready to move into the new courthouse across the street. And it is a beautiful facility. The state has invested a lot of money in this community to bring the standards of our courtrooms up to the 21st century. And unfortunately, one of the things that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the administration, we weren't aware of the additional costs of providing the state mandate for security for the new courthouse. And what the topic of discussion was that, you know, how are we going to meet these costs going forward starting in January, which this board has not budgeted for, and it's significant. It's better to the tune of $200,000. Yeah, and one of the main reasons I made sure I attended the Farm Bureau dinner was to speak with Senator Canella and the representative from Assemblyman Aleo's office to see if we could start moving forward with some legislation to relieve us of this additional burden. And it's a grave concern for us, I believe, and we're going to have this agendized at the next board meeting. I wish we could have had it agendized for this meeting, but as I found out on Friday afternoon, and we've already posted our agenda, but it is a huge, huge problem. And the courts and the sheriff had prepared 3 or 4 different options, which will probably go in detail in 2 weeks from now. And I think another option, I'm going to throw it out there right now, is maybe a delay in opening up the new courthouse. it's that serious of a problem. I think we need to have a commitment from the state to provide its obligation, and that our general fund cannot sustain, this additional cost, especially when our jail and our patrols are so critically understaffed. If we had extra money, we would be moving that out into the field rather than in the new facility. So we'll have a pretty lively discussion, I think, in 2 weeks when we have that agendized. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The board has no items to pull. Would the public would like to pull any of the items? If not,
Motion to approve, Mr.
Second.
Chair.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to the first item of the regular agenda. Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is item number 19 on our regular agenda, and we're going to be discussing with you the use tax ballot measures and requesting your board to provide direction to staff. I have Janelle Cox, our management analyst here. She's going to be providing you the information. And this information that we brought to the intergovernmental, and we're basically bringing it back to your board. Thank you, Janelle.
So this thing. There it is. Excuse us while we get this machine going. Okay. So the purpose of today's discussion is to bring you up to date on the current status of this general tax measure. Since 0809, San Benito County has seen its general fund balance reduce by $13 million. There's been 85 general funded positions that have been eliminated since 0607. Public services have been reduced, maintenance reduced or eliminated, and staff backlogs have been increasing. Staff itself has endured furloughs, frozen step increases, COLAs have been deferred, and negotiations are continuing with our unions. So your board directed that we begin to investigate or analyze various revenue measure options. In the fall of 2012, if you remember, we underwent an analysis about the feasibility of establishing a Parks, Recreation, and Library Community Services District that culminated with a poll in the December of 2012. The results of the poll indicated that we had 55% support of a potential special district, but not the required 2/3 vote to pass a special district and a revenue measure. So your board said, well, let's look at the feasibility of establishing or going forward to the voters with a general tax measure. And so in January, we came back with you with some timelines and some measures, some implementation measures on how we could go forward with a general tax measure in 2014. And then your board asked for further information about a transaction and use tax ballot measure. And so we came back in August and gave you a report that gave all the particulars about the impacts of a transaction and use tax measure on the county, that it would be, it would blanket both the incorporated and unincorporated territories. And so your board said because of the impacts upon the adjacent, or its cities, City of Hollister and San Juan Bautista, go talk to the Intergovernmental Committee to get some input on the impact or the feasibility of doing a transaction and use tax that's a county-wide measure. So in August, we came back to you and gave you, this is the information that was presented to you in August. It looked at the various tax rates that currently exist in our cities and the impacts of a transaction and use tax that would add either 1/4% on up to 1% on top. We looked at the potential revenue that could be raised with the transaction and use tax, and so here you can see in the chart the potential revenue that could be raised by a 1/4% on up to 1%, and then the manner in which that revenue would be allocated to the various municipalities and the county if one were approved. So the Intergovernmental Committee reviewed the potential tax measure at its meeting in September. At that meeting, there wasn't support. There was support from San Juan Bautista, but there wasn't support from the city of Hollister, in that they had just passed Measure E, and they felt that going back to the voters in 2014 was really not an area that they wanted to go at this time. So we're coming back to you with a recommendation that we pursue or we work toward a potential ballot measure in 2016, and that budget be funding in 2014 so that we can begin this feasibility effort, establish an advisory committee in January of 2015, and begin the effort to talk to the community about such a ballot measure, and then again conduct a public opinion poll in the fall of 2015 so that you can make a decision in time to go forward with 2016. So that's a status on what we've been working on, and we're looking to you now for the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions, Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have the support of the city to move forward in 2016? I don't recall if that was part of the discussion at the, and we do, right?
No, we did discuss it. We don't have the support of the city.
For 2016?
Well, they made no position for 2016.
Okay,
but
because
for the current situation, they said no.
All right, but I'm assuming that we do need to have their support if we're going to move forward, because what will happen is that our, if this passes the 1%, it would be, they would give up their 1% where they have in just the city of Hollister, and then move on to the 1% that would be passed countywide. Am I correct, Janelle?
We could always, in January of 2015, where we're saying establish the advisory committee, would be the point that we could begin those discussions again with the city of Hollister. It gives the community the opportunity to see how they've been with their current measure and the accomplishments that have been achieved, to determine if a continued ballot measure in 2016 would assist them. That would be something they would have to consider at that time.
So we will have to go back to the city to see if we have the support to move forward then?
Yeah, at that point.
At that time. Okay. I like the plan, Janelle. I think that it's really well thought out. And I know that when we had this meeting last time, 2014, did not appear to be, it appeared to be too soon, and that we might fail because there was not going to be enough time to plan. This gives us a little more time, and I will support it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board? Yeah, it's kind of interesting listening to your comments, Supervisor Barrios. Did the city ask us if we were supportive of their tax measure? We have to take care of our business and do what we think is right, and sometimes that might be contrary to maybe what the city feels is in their interest. And but as we all completely understand that our departments need additional staffing. We're just getting by on a shoestring right now. And I think it's unrealistic to move on a quicker schedule than 2016 anyway, to be honest with you. But we provide a lot of services for the citizens of the city of Hollister, whether it's library, parks, and even public protection, safety. And so I kind of feel that hopefully we have the support of the city, that they understand our circumstances, but we, as a board, would have to figure out, what the best course of action is for the county and all of its citizens. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I do appreciate staff's time on this, except I don't support a tax. I mean, I really don't. I don't think, you know, when I look at a tax, I look at, you know, the voters entrusting us to make wise decisions with the money, you know, that with our taxpayer resources. And when we have a board that's making decisions to lower educational qualifications for the CAO, it's just, in my opinion, it absolutely it doesn't warrant asking them for more money. I just think that we've got to be more diligent as a board and as a county to make sure that we increase our revenues in other ways. So I don't support the idea of a tax. I think that is unfair to voters, and that's where I stand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
One more comment, Mr. Chair. In regards to the city, I believe the reason that we want the city's support for this is because we need to make sure that the voters know that we're not going to, and maybe I'm wrong, but that we're not going to add another % to the city residents. That I believe that if this passes for the countywide, that they would give up their 1% that they're getting now for their Measure T, and then would piggyback or go on to our countywide tax measure. Is that correct, Janelle?
That was the proposal.
Yeah, and that is why we need the city, not because we just want to make sure that they approve what we want to do, but really we need to make sure that they're on board with that. Because the citizens should not be having to pay the 1% twice. They should only pay it once, and if we do a countywide, then they would have to eliminate their 1%. So, okay?
Oh, thank you for
So I wanted to clarify that.
That's
Yeah,
right. Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my comment I definitely think going towards 2016 is a better, more thoughtful approach than trying to rush it through 2014. But I've been a big proponent of the county transit occupancy tax, raising that. Actually, I've been proposing it to go up to 12% because I believe that's what San Juan Bautista has their at. And I think that's doable for 2014. And so I don't want that to get lost in all this, that we need to pursue raising our transit occupancy tax and then verbally commit to using that increase for economic development. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Cruz?
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate Supervisor Barrios saying those explanations about the position of the city, and it's very important that 36,000, I don't know what it is, it's up there, of the voters or the registered voters or the citizens live in the city, and so we need to work together with the city of San Juan Bautista to develop a good plan if we're going to go to the public and ask for a sales tax increase, and definitely do not want to ask the voters, especially the city halls here, that they already have one in place and ask them for another one, because confusion will play a big role in how it turns out, the vote. But I do believe now that the attitude of the city, especially some of the members of the city council, is changing a little bit now that they're getting their finances in order, now that they're seeing the pictures coming around the corner, and theirs is about to sunset, theirs is about to expire. What's the substitute that they're going to replace? So I'm willing to hedge some capital cloud that once that 1% is about to expire, they're going to kind of want to come talk to the county and say, how can we work together?
Yeah, good point. Anyone from the public would like to speak?
Marty Richard from Hollister. You know, I put my nose in this first time, and I got it bent because I tried to do something that was not in accordance with the state law. And I thank Mr. Granger and everybody else involved who said you can't do that. It straightened me out. So I appreciate Supervisor Barrios and the rest of the board coming up with a way to work around that state law restriction concerning by putting in a tax sharing measure that would basically be revenue neutral for the city. I think your short discussion here has hit every nail right on the head. And so, first of all, the key to the city is you need the votes more than you need anything else there. and so you have to convince those folks they won't be getting double taxed. And to do that, you got to get a tax sharing agreement. And I think realistically, you know, as I said, when Measure T came in originally, now we're on Measure E, that tax, once it came in, was never going away. And it's never going away because there's no way the city can possibly function without it. Unfortunately, I wish it would go away because I think it's been detrimental in some respect, but it's not going away. So I think you ought to get that straightened out before they run out of letters. You know, they had Measure T, and now they're going to have Measure E, and then F and G, and we'll be going into AAA before they want to get rid of that tax, I assure you. So I think that would be the best solution, and you know, you rarely see me pro-tax, but I think in the function of fairness to the whole county, fairness to the vast majority of people in the county who live in the city and pay this tax, and most of it being paid on gasoline, so it really hurts for the commuters. I think your solution of making it revenue neutral for the two cities, San Juan Bautista and Hollister, and working it out that way is the best answer. But, you know, realistically, once you take the city money out of it, you're not generating that much. I hate to say that. I don't want to sound like I'm snotty that $1.5 million isn't a lot of money. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at how much it buys you in labor these days, it's not a lot of money. We just talked about maybe $400,000 just for the court safety and security. So it's not a lot of money. We've got to figure out more ways to get revenue. The welcome stranger taxes, such as wait till you see what your hotel bill is going to be in San Jose next to the new stadium. The welcome stranger taxes, like proposed by Mr. Munzer, are good. And also, just to wrap up, I don't know, from last night, the city is moving ahead with going to see a consultant about putting another a named branded motel in the environments. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's intuitively obvious to the most casual observer that if you raise the taxes, you raise the revenue. A few years back, 5, 6 years back, California passed a tax on income in excess of $1 million. I don't think there were too many people in San Benito County that got impacted with that. But I think the incremental tax rate for those folks was right at maybe barely over 10%. The very next year, there were over 1,500 millionaires that moved out of Los Angeles County. I didn't know there were that many there, but over 1,500 millionaires moved out of Los Angeles County, and probably to Florida where there's no income tax, and they saved a bunch of money. California revenue didn't go up near as much as they were expecting. Just to confirm the Laffer curve. Increased taxes, revenue goes up. Increased taxes more, revenue goes up a little bit. Increased taxes more, revenue goes down. California's already in that position. It was when John Kennedy became president. He inherited a pretty good recession from President Eisenhower. Deficits. You know what he did? He lowered the taxes, and revenue increased. John Kennedy, president, reduced taxes, federal income tax revenue increased. It took 2 years, but it increased. So keep in mind, Mr. Rivas, kind of agree with you there, and Mr. Munzer, agree with you as well there. If they visit us, let's tax them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion and probably direction. And you know, I understand what you're saying now, Supervisor Barrios, and you're absolutely correct as far as, you know, making sure that the city is, you know, supportive of it, especially when they have to, you know, it kind of disrupts their tax, or, you know, they have to put something on the table as well. So that makes sense. I'm happy you clarified that. I'm not excited about raising, you know, sales taxes, to be honest with you. But the occupancy tax, I think that's a given. That should be done as soon as we possibly can. I don't know what kind of, you know, it's just, what, $10,000 for a 2% increase according to staff report.
Approximately. Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's unreasonable compared to other areas that charge, you know, your hotel tax. Well, ours is pretty low. Of course, we need more hotels.
We're going to get them.
I hope so. But, you know, my question, especially to those on the committee for the intergovernmental committee, is that we did budget $75,000 for this effort. Before we spend it, shouldn't we have the agreement working with the city first?
Yeah. Well, I think what we're going to do first with moving forward is that this is going to give us the opportunity to do the feasibility study to see if the county, the voters, would support it, right, Janelle?
If you budget the money again for 14-15, you really wouldn't need, you would begin the establishment of the advisory committee and looking at the measure and talking with the city. You really wouldn't need the dollars until 15-16 to do the polling in, say, say September of 2015. But you're going to need some dollars next year to begin working on the development of what are we talking about. Doing some outreach and trying to define the structure of the proposed tax that you're looking at.
So we can move forward with this, Supervisor Botello, in answer to your concern, and just bring it up at the intergovernmental and say, this is how we're going to be moving forward. Yeah. And give them a heads up and start working and talking with them so that we can get their support when this feasibility study is complete. So,
that would be good.
So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we confirm that the county will not proceed with placement of a transaction and use general tax measure for approval by the voters during the November 2014 election process, and to direct staff to budget funding to analyze the feasibility of the placement of a transactions and use general tax measure on the November 2016 ballot, to include funding for community outreach, a public opinion poll, and legal services for consideration during the 14-15 budget process.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No.
One no. All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is item number 20 on our agenda, and this particular item is going to be presented to you from our management analyst, Margie Riopel, and we're going to be discussing with your board the 5-year impact fee report, fiscal year 08-09 through 12-13, and we have Margie here to discuss this with you.
Good morning. The 5-year impact fee report has been prepared by the County Administrative Office for the San Benito County Board of Supervisors for their review of the San Benito County Impact Fee Program. It covers the 5-year period beginning in fiscal year 2008-09 through fiscal year 2012-13. The Impact Fee Program includes drainage, traffic, road equipment, county fire protection, capital improvements, habitat conservation, and parks and recreation. The report is in compliance with the annual and 5-year reporting requirements of the Government Code, Sections 66001 and 66006. The information provided herein has been collected from the Auditor's Office, from capital improvement plans, project budgets, and departmental budgets associated with the impact fees. The Auditor Office concurs with the financial data in reference to each of these impact fee funds, as was reported in each of the 5 years and at year-end fiscal year 2012-13. The report provides an overview of the impact fees and includes information specific for each of the impact fee funds. The purpose of each fee, a reasonable relationship between the fee and its intended purpose, identification of the projects completed in each of the fiscal years, and a list of proposed projects in future years beyond 2012 to 2013. The report further defines the beginning and ending fund balance of each year, the amount of the fees collected, interest earned, total revenues, the sources and use of the funds, the amount of the percentage of fund used for the projects, interfund transfers and loans that have been made, and also future projects anticipated. This report is introduced for your review and receipt today. As per the Government Code 66006 B2, this report will be made available for public review for at least 15 days prior to a second meeting to be held. The second meeting is scheduled for December 3rd, 2013, at which time the report will be brought back for your review and approval. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here and available to answer any questions that you may have about the report that has been submitted. I did provide you hard copies so that you could view it more easily. So if you have any questions.
Okay,
Mr.
Supervisor
Chair,
Barrios.
Janelle, there are no changes on this report?
No, no,
To
the same.
the one that is in the computer? That
Yes.
is in online. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from the board? On table 5B, it reflects no future projects or funding has been identified from the capital improvement law enforcement impact fee.
That's correct.
But we're still collecting impact fees if there's no project identified?
In this fiscal year, they did not identify a project to be funded. However, that impact fee is still in place for future development. It's not that they didn't address an impact fee on a project at this point.
Oh, okay.
And that's something we need to probably discuss further with the sheriff's office.
Mr. Chair, don't we have to identify the project to
Well,
collect
that's
it?
what is my question, is that you have to have projects identified in order to collect the fee or allocate it.
Do we have a matching fund that we have to do for the new construction, Bill?
Pardon me?
Do we have a matching fee that we have to come up with for the new construction? No?
No.
That's not part of it?
It may have been an oversight on the sheriff's side in providing a project, but there was nothing that was projected in the budget that I could see, unless there was something in his own budget that he wasn't planning on using the funding source for. In previous years, they used it to purchase vehicles. I did not see anything that was reflected in his budget to pose that.
But didn't that raise questions of if we can purchase those vehicles against impact fees?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Yeah, I remember that discussion, and I remember, I asked the question, I go, wait a minute, these are for, to meet future development, and how can a purchase of a vehicle that's going to replace an old vehicle meet that future need?
They also have to meet the levels of service that are provided at the time when the development was done. So that service is still there. Yes. That level of service is still there.
I guess that's why.
So it has to be defined more clearly, and that's one of the points with bringing forward the ordinance in the next item.
Just one thing, point of clarification for the sheriff's budget. There were some capital items that were eliminated from the 2301 technology budget because we simply ran out of funding for that where we had our match. So probably the flux of what was going to be able to be completed under that project budget and what would be future caused some of this delay. So there are projects that were eliminated due to budgeting concerns for the 2301 technology facility. They perhaps just didn't get into the sheriff's budget. That's a clarification matter that we can go forward and identify some capital things that were struck from that could be funded in future years. So that's
okay.
And currently, they only have $85,000 in that fund, I believe.
Okay. And I had one more that kind of caught my eye, and I think it could be a paragraph that was kind of cut and pasted in the wrong spot. Maybe it is.
Okay.
On Section 7, Parks and Recreation Impact Fee, Will Dan Financial Services completed a nexus study for the Parks and Recreation Impact Fees in September 2012. The Board of Supervisors has directed staff to move forward with an update of impact fees as suggested by Will Dan Financial Services. This will result in a new ordinance or amendment to the fee ordinance for the Fire Mitigation Impact Fee Fund.
It should be in Parks and Recreation. I did cut and paste, and I did make a mistake.
What page is that, Mr. Chair?
Usually Supervisor Barrios catches those things.
I caught another one, so I'm going to bring it up. I
And
thought
that
you
was
had
on
caught the
page-
one I had caught.
Okay. You're reading your work. Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public?
I have two comments, one of which is also one that Supervisor Barrios missed, so she must be concentrating on something else. On page 8 on the traffic mitigation fee project,
Is it 145 on the agenda? I bet it is.
the first item there is, it says the project will widen 5.2 miles of State Route 156 from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. I think it's the other way around. I think we're going to widen it from.
Shoot, I thought we were going to get this
4
through,
lanes.
Margie.
No, actually, I
No.
highlighted that one, and that was the one that I got.
Is that the one you had? Okay. And then I have another one that I would like to comment on. Down at the bottom, it says there's a separate list identified below of locations where the signals are going to be. I could not find the list, and I was really looking for that list specifically because I wanted to recommend that to that list be added, as I've done previously, a signal here on the corner of West and San Benito. For the court, I've walked the area and I've looked at it carefully, and I still believe that you're going to need a signal there rather than a crosswalk in the middle, because I see people parking over in the parking garage to come to the courthouse, and the question will be, will they really want to cross over there, or will they take the nice stroll down here past the courthouse and cross over here? I still think this is worthwhile. I understand it's a huge expense. I have no personal benefit from it. I live all the way on the other side of town. I just think that as this develops, the courthouse and the city has some plans to do economic development of the corner down below there. I just think you're going to need a signal there eventually, and I hate to see us put in $65,000 for somebody who every 5 minutes is going to press the crosswalk button, and the lights are going to go, and the traffic's going to be essentially uncontrolled. And as it backs up, no one will be able to make a left turn here. No one will be able to make a left turn coming from the courthouse, and that's going to be a real problem. So I think you need a signal there, and I hope you could add it to the list and add the list to the report. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My apologies. I extracted that one page out of the traffic study that was done so that you could see all the projects that COG was looking at to use with traffic impact fees. So I missed that.
Anyone else? Supervisor Barrios?
I have some questions, Mr. Chair. Margie, that one that Marty brought up is on our agenda, page 145, if you didn't catch that number. But Steve, I have a question on the page 148, the asphalt chipper attachment.
Oh, yeah.
I know that you have been testing one, and that is on page 148 of our agenda.
Okay. It's not, we don't have that copy. A second, let me find it for you.
That would be
11.
page 1, well.
Page 11 in the
page
packet.
11. I know that we have been testing this chipper attachment, but we have not committed to purchasing it yet?
We actually have.
We have, okay, because it says 13, 14, so it's in our, we bought it then.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. And then on page 153, I don't know who that,
Which impact fee?
let me look.
page 16.
153 would have to do with the, this would be the capital improvements, and I believe this would be, deal with like air conditioners, heating units, and we have a balance of 85,870
No, that's,
on the
Are you-
page, that would be page
That's
page
a-
number 16, Margie.
okay, thank you.
It doesn't appear to be enough to cover very much at all.
This is the same law, this is the law enforcement.
So this is still law enforcement?
This
So
one here is law
85,000
enforcement.
would only be specific to
Yeah.
their
Yes.
building? So then we
Well,
would-
building or equipment.
Or equipment, okay. So that would be enough to cover if we had some sort of a unit go down or, okay. And then the last one would be page 154. And Supervisor Botello already brought it up. It was
Okay.
blank with no future projects, so it's been addressed.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. There's no one else from public would like to comment on the report? If not, I'll close the public comment period. Mr. Witchery?
If the board would like, I can actually answer Mr. Richmond's question regarding the traffic signal, if the board would like to hear that.
Okay.
So basically what happens is that the identified signals that were in the traffic impact report were identified in this traffic study that was done by COG with a combination of county and city forces for the traffic impact fee. TAC staff, Transportation Activity Commission staff, basically has began discussions at a staff level about reanalyzing and updating that traffic impact fee. The traffic fee that was done did not include such developments as Fairview Corners, because it wasn't a project when that was done, and it does not include the prospective project out at the golf course, the Del Webb community. Those are now in the queue, and it also has been about 3 years since that has been done. Typically, those reports are updated every 3 to 5 years. They take about a year to pursue, so with that changing landscape, with the time that it's been, it's about time for us to do that report again, us, all three agencies, is what I'm talking about there. When that is in the development stages, we take input from different intersections that may want to be analyzed, and we can put that in the traffic model and see how that does go forward. So to put it into this type of report may be premature, but if we can fold it into the next traffic impact fee mitigation study, which should begin, we're going to go through, like I said, it's discussed at staff level now, and we'll be going through that process hopefully very shortly.
I have a question for Steve, and it's kind of unrelated to that really, but I have seen a lot of crosswalks that have the blinking lights on the street. Would that be a city thing, or would that be state or county? Who would?
Depends where the issue is located. So basically, whoever has jurisdiction of that road would actually be the agency that implements that crosswalk. The one at Hazel Hawkins, for example, was funded through a process with COG, but the city actually went through the installation process. The one that's done at the high school was also funded through COG, and the city took the lead, but it was a joint city-county project, with the city taking the lead on construction of that one. So the one that's considered over here would be the city project, because it's in the boundaries of the city and it's in their jurisdiction.
And they're considering one of those blinking
That's my understanding. I'm
crosswalks?
not
Okay.
exactly sure, but that's my understanding. They're considering a blinking crosswalk.
Yeah, because folks will take the closest path, and
Right.
that's going to be the closest path from the parking garage to the courthouse, of course. So I was just wondering if we would be involved in any of that cost, so.
Right, and the other thing to think about with the courthouse over here, and I'm not exactly sure how many stalls are in their facility over here, but that's something our existing courthouse did not have, was a dedicated parking lot. So with the parking lot that sits across the street over here, how much of the traffic will go there, how much daily traffic goes there, I don't know. I haven't been involved in those numbers at all. So it's almost let's look at what happens when it opens and study the situation, and then that's going to come into timing with the new traffic impact fee mitigation report, and we can look at that level, if that intersection rises to the level that it needs to be addressed on a regional level.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
I have Supervisor De La Cruz and then Supervisor Munzer.
Steve, the city's going to move forward with that blinking light. That's my understanding. And I've actually talked to Ignacio and, try to convince him otherwise to really put a stoplight out there. And his response is that the staff says, well, it's going to, create bottleneck all the way back to downtown. And I said, look at 4th and East Street right in front of Bill's Bullpen. There's a stop sign there, and it hasn't crossed a problem. So I don't see the logic.
Actually, the intersection of 4th and East in Bill's Bullpen is a very big traffic problem. That is one of the traffic intersections that was put in with political pressure, and it really impacts the function of the 4th and San Benito Street signal, because what happens is that queue that comes on down San Benito, down 4th Street to that's going west can't get more than a block through because the stop sign doesn't allow that whole queue between the railroad track and the intersection to clear. The queue only clears the block of between West and San Benito Street for a signal. So it actually it actually contributes to the problem at 4th and San Benito, that stop sign. The challenge has been, it's been looked at a number of different times back in my previous area as well, to actually try to remove that, but it's going to be, it's a challenging intersection. All downtowns are challenging, and it's a challenge to try to deal with that particular intersection. So the 4th and East one is not a great, or sorry, 4th and East is not a great intersection operating today, and it actually impacts the 4th and San Benito intersection.
But I guess, okay, thank you. But if you drive through 4th Street, maybe 3 or 4 times out of the day, in the morning, right, and after lunch, and in the afternoon, and then when the commuters are coming back home, it is very difficult to cross on 4th Street. And now when you're going to have the court system out there, you're going to have an increase of foot traffic. You're going to have cars out there. You're going to have more activity out there. And so I don't think a signal light's going to do the job. I think we really need some kind of permanent structure there that it's a free flow, that cars and bicycles and everyone has to stop to let the traffic move back and forth. We've got to do it. I see this creating a real bad problem down the road.
Yeah, correct. One of the things that we have to look at, and I haven't actually seen the documents for it, for the actual courthouse construction, they have to do an environmental document as well for that building, and in that environmental document had to be a traffic report. It never came to us for review. It's on the state's hands and the state's purview. They had to look at the traffic that would go at that intersection. They had to analyze it, and they had to address the impacts as any other development project would have to do. Their traffic and their environmental document for that building must have analyzed that. I haven't seen it. I don't know. But it must have analyzed the traffic and transportation patterns in this area. It would almost have to do that because of the questions that are being brought up. It might behoove us to talk to Mr. Solario and try to get a copy of that report to see if we can answer some of these questions instead of speculating about what could be, because they should have analyzed it. Now, the analysis is it's hypothetical. They assume what it's going to be, and then we try to react on the backside of it. So that's what I'm saying. They have their own dedicated parking lot. We don't know how it's going to react. There's been an analysis done to predict how it will, but whether the predictions hold true, that's yet to be seen.
Supervisor Munzer?
Couple comments. I think this is another case of the state built this building, and we're appreciative that they did, but they're not taking in consideration all the impacts, as Supervisor Patello mentioned. There's going to be some security issues that may fall on us for it. The city is having to put in this lighted crosswalk. I believe when I was on the board of the HDA, I kind of kept saying the same thing Marty did, that this lighted crosswalk is not going to be enough. I believe at that time they were estimating it was going to cost $50,000 to put in the lighted crosswalk, and then if they find in a year or two it's not doing the job, then they're going to have to come back and spend the extra money for the lights. This cannot be on our dime totally for this. We're talking about our impact fees, but can we assist the city in something? Possibly, but definitely I think either Monterey or West, and probably West would be the better one, which should be signalized, is my feeling, and I've said that for quite a while. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? If none, we could have I guess we need to receive the report.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to receive this report.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? Thank you. Move on to the next one. It's Sayo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this item is 21, and what the administration and the board is requesting is to create an ad hoc committee. A lot of the analysis and data that was received here on item number 20 was from Wildan Financial Services some time back, and we haven't actually finished the last portion of that. And basically what we need to do is tweak the ordinance. We need to move forward to allocate the funding, the percentage of funding in the specific departments that are doing some of this work, county council, for instance, or if there's technology aspects that need to be dealt with.